A Less Than Royal Narcissist, Part 25. Morgan versus Markle. In Part 24, I explained to you the dynamic between Meghan Markle and Piers Morgan, because it is one where two narcissists collide. Initially, all was well between the two. Meghan Markle hoovered Piers Morgan unconsciously to obtain the prime aims. He was more prominent than her. And Piers Morgan also hoovered her. It enabled him to satisfy the prime aims also, draw fuel from her, control her, gain character traits, residual benefits. And to begin with, the relationship was a beneficial one. Neither threatened the control of the other, and therefore both flowed with positive fuel. And then it turned sour. Because Meghan Markle had become engaged to Prince Harry, she then dropped Piers Morgan, put him on the shelf. Her narcissism effectively stated, we don't need to take him off the shelf. He serves no purpose to us. Our fuel needs are being met from lots of other people, character traits are being met by lots of other people, and residual benefits are far superior to what he can offer us. Therefore, there's no point taking him off the shelf. We don't need to maintain a friendship with him. We don't do so because our friendships aren't based on emotional empathy or a sense of accountability. They are based upon what that person can do for us, i.e., providing the prime aims. Morgan was left on the shelf. This naturally wounded him, because it made him feel in his unconscious weak, powerless, and unimportant. Meghan Markle became painted black, and thereafter, every time she appeared on Piers Morgan's radar, his narcissism asked this question: is Meghan Markle under control? Every single time the answer came, no, she is not. And therefore, in order to assert control, because a narcissist must always assert control in some way through one of the three assertions of control, Piers Morgan's narcissism compelled him to smear Meghan through columns, tweets, talk show interviews, so that in his world, control was asserted over her. And there was a repeated course of conduct by him because of the prominence of Meghan Markle. He couldn't escape seeing her, and therefore she kept coming up on his radar. Because he would see her, people would probably ask him, how do you feel about the friendship having gone sour? Are you going to be invited to the wedding? Why do you think she's no longer involved with you? And of course, he doesn't know the real reason either. He just thinks she's a social climber because his narcissism causes him to think of her that way, rather than realise that he's dealing with a fellow narcissist. And so, I took you through the dynamic from their first interaction electronically in the autumn of 2015, and it's very common for narcissists to utilise electronic arenas as hunting grounds, up until May 2018, prior to the royal wedding. In May of 2018, Piers Morgan tweets on the 14th of May 2018, "Poor Meghan Markle, what a mess. I wonder if her mother will now walk her down the aisle." Talking, of course, about the situation between Meghan Markle and her father. On first blush, if you were not acquainted with narcissism, you might think that what Piers Morgan is doing is expressing sympathy for her, but he's not. What he's doing is he's continuing to smear her by highlighting that her familial relationships are a complete mess, and thus so is her wedding. It's a further provocation designed by his narcissism to assert control. Around the same time, Morgan continues as he writes a column on the 16th of May 2018, and he writes as follows: "What a mess. Weddings are supposed to be wonderfully positive occasions, filled with love, romance, and good cheer, a chance for two families and two sets of disparate friends to come together as one to celebrate the union of a happy couple. Fat chance of that with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding, which has swiftly descended into an acrimonious, disorganised fiasco, and there are still 3 long days until the big day." Again, while some people might mistake this as expressing sympathy for the situation, it's not. He's gleefully pronouncing What a fiasco it is. What a chaotic mess it all is. What a circus. And again is smearing. The day before the wedding, on the 19th of May, Morgan takes to social media once again and posts a picture of an empty doormat, writing, "An empty doormat, no last-minute invite, that's the last time I'm buying Meghan Markle a bloody dirty martini." And of course he's referring to the drinks that they had all that time ago. And of course people might be thinking, for goodness sake, Piers, let it go, it's in the past. But he can't. Not because he sits there belly aching about this every day, waking up thinking, Meghan Markle's a bitch and she was once my friend. No, but every time she comes up on his radar, his narcissism asks, is she under control? No, she's not. And rather than just ignore her and jettison it and think, oh, well, that's the end of that, as some narcissists might, because of his platform, because of the fact that he has people responding to him, some doing so positively and agreeing with him, and that he has a newspaper column, and that he can appear on chat shows, etc., he keeps on asserting control indirectly by smearing. On the 20th of May, 2018, the royal wedding takes place. Morgan doesn't attend, of course, and he tweets, "Loved the royal wedding and the beautiful actress bride put on the performance of her life, but I still find it very weird that Meghan only invited 2 members of her family, and one of them was a no-show." Again, this is smearing and the indirect assertion of control. Morgan praises the royal wedding, thus asserting control benignly over the royal family. They are not painted black. And note the subtle dig at the beautiful actress bride put on the performance of her life. This isn't because Morgan knows that she's a narcissist, but what he's doing is he's criticising her, saying that it was all a performance. And then he adds a further dig by talking about the fact that she only invited 2 members of her family and one of those chose not to do so. He doesn't talk about how wonderful the occasion was for her, how happy he is for her. Oh no. He continues the smearing as a consequence of his need to assert control. In June 2018, Morgan continues his smearing of Meghan, and he invites Meghan's dad to his ITV morning show and paints a narrative of Thomas Markle as a pitiful victim of Meghan's cruelty and coldness. Well, not so long ago, he was talking about this individual in such terms as it being completely chaotic. And indeed, Morgan actually states, "I've changed my mind about Meghan's dad. He's just a shy, decent man struggling to deal with the mayhem of his little princess marrying a prince." As the headline reads in his column Mail Online on the 18th of June 2018. And of course, this demonstrates the hypocrisy of the narcissist, of once being friendly with Meghan, then turning on her, and then slating Meghan Markle and saying, actually, no, I've changed, slating Thomas Markle, rather, and I've changed my mind. This is the chameleon nature of the narcissist in full flow. I will say and do whatever is necessary for the purpose of asserting control over people, and if that means I'm nice to you on Monday and horrible to you by Monday afternoon, so be it. And I don't even see that there's anything wrong in behaving that way, because I'm entitled to do it. And so now, he continues his smearing of Meghan by siding with her father. In December 2018, Morgan takes to Twitter once again, and puts on the 4th of December 2018, "My ex-friend Meghan Markle is a ruthless social climbing actress who's landed the role of her life and is determined to milk it for all she can, and that's why the palace poison has begun." Now, of course, in part he's correct, because he has identified, although he doesn't realise it, another narcissist at work causing problems within the royal family. But his analysis is driven by his own need to assert control over her as a consequence of the fact that she remains painted black because of what had happened previously, and each time she comes up on the radar, she's not under control, so he continues to assert control by smearing her. And he raises allegations of her being a ruthless social climbing actress. and that she's landed the role of her life, and she's determined to milk it for all that she can. And then he writes similarly on the 4th of December in his column with the same title, and his column starts, "I was ghosted by Meghan Markle. If you're not familiar with the term ghosting, it's when someone you thought was a friend suddenly cuts off all communication with you with zero warning, and then you never hear another word from that person again. I remember it very clearly because it's never happened to me before. Of course, grandiosity, I'm Mr. Important. Nobody's dropped me ever before because I am so important. So this sticks in my mind of particular importance. So once again, indirect assertion of control by Morgan by stating this about her, saying, you ghosted me, you did the wrong thing, but also to save face, this doesn't normally happen to me. A classic comment of a narcissist. He continues to write in defence of Thomas Markle and attacking Meghan for her apparently abhorrent treatment of him. On the January the 8th, 2020, of course, the Sussexes stepped back from senior royal duties. And as a consequence of this, again, she comes up on the radar, and Piers Morgan tweets on the 8th of January 2020, people say, I'm too critical of Meghan Markle, but she ditched her family, smear, ditched her dad, smear, ditched most of her old friends, smear, split Harry from William, smear, and has now split him from the royal family, smear. I rest my case. Now, Morgan is actually accurate in terms of the reasons that he has written all of that, because those things did happen. But he's not analysing the situation as I am doing so, but he's doing it from a personal perspective as a consequence of Miss Markle threatening his control. And therefore, although he's accurate about what he stated, he is using those accurate observations for the purposes of asserting control over her, and therefore continues with the comments on Twitter. On March the 6th, 2020, in his column, Morgan compliments a rainy day photo of Meghan and Harry. And then he writes, I've made no secret of my disdain for many of the Sussexes' antics since they got married 20 months ago, nor indeed for my former friend, Meghan, ghosting me. Oh, did she, Piers? We never knew. You'd never mentioned it before. Ghosting me the moment she met her prince. Notice there the grandiosity that basically Morgan suggests that the real reason he was dropped was that because she met Prince Harry. Now, in part, that's accurate because Prince Harry was a bigger fish, so to speak. But that was an intimate relationship. And therefore, she could have remained friends with Piers Morgan. It wasn't that she was courting him romantically and decided, I'll end that and choose this intimate partner instead. She put him on the shelf because he served no purpose. And in his column, he writes how Meghan and Harry's supposed constant complaining and attempts to bully the Queen into doing royal things their way, and PC crazed wokeness catapulted them quickly out of the media's graces. He continues to assert control through the indirect assertion. From summer through winter 2020, as Finding Freedom, which is the new book sympathetic to Meghan and Harry, hits the shelves and they sign their Netflix deal, Morgan continues, and he calls them hypocritical in one of his columns, and a pair of appallingly bitter, staggeringly self-obsessed, utterly deluded and woefully tone-deaf laughingstocks in another of his columns in the Daily Mail of the 27th of July 2020. He writes, Where's the positivity? Moans Prince Harry. Why is everyone so miserable and angry? Morgan writes, I regret to say I laughed out loud when I read that line from the new book Finding Freedom, which claims to be the real story about why Harry and his wife Meghan quit the royals and Britain. It's hard to think of anyone in public life right now more relentlessly miserable, angry and negative than the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Barely a week goes by without them whining about something or suing people. Again, notice the difference. Once upon a time, Meghan was wonderful. The beautiful actress that Piers praised. And then, just because she didn't involve herself with him any longer, she becomes painted black. And every time she comes up on the radar, he smears, smears, smears. Now remember, when it comes to smearing, a narcissist will use both information that is accurate and information that is fabricated or portrayed in a slightly different way for the purposes of asserting control. So it's important to remember that even though many of the things that he say are an attack against her because he needs to assert control over her, it doesn't diminish their accuracy. So, for instance, take, for example, a narcissist whose partner cheats upon them. That has actually happened, and therefore they've room for complaint. But if they go around telling the entire world about the fact that they've been cheated on, that transgresses boundaries. It shows a sense of entitlement. And it's not so much about them being hurt in the way that somebody with emotional empathy would be hurt, but it's about asserting control by telling everybody this person has cheated on me. The world doesn't need to know. But the narcissist believes that they have to know because of grandiosity, a sense of entitlement, that underlying need to assert control. The interview takes place on March the 7th, 2021, with Oprah. And then on March the 8th, Piers Morgan responds to the Oprah interview in the Daily Mail, where he writes, Meghan and Harry's nauseating 2-hour Oprah wine-a-thon was a disgraceful diatribe of cynical race-baiting propaganda designed to damage the Queen as her husband lies in hospital and destroy the monarchy. It starts off sickening, shameful, self-pitying, salacious, scandalous, sanctimonious, spectacularly self-serving. He certainly knows his alliteration, does the boy Morgan. Those were just my initial thoughts after 10 minutes of the Oprah wine-a-thon with Meghan and Harry, and whilst restricting myself to only using words beginning with the letter S. By the time I'd finished the whole 2-hour orgy of pious, self-indulgent, score-setting twaddle, the steam was erupting out of my ears like an exploding geyser, and my lexicon of rageful epithets extended to the full range of the alphabet. Never have I watched a more repulsively disingenuous interview. No one more horrendously hypocritical or contradictory. Of course, Piers won't be able to recognise that he's a hypocrite and that he behaves in a disingenuous way. But again, having sat down and watched the interview, thus Meghan comes upon his radar, his narcissism cries out. Steps must be taken to assert control over her, and thus that's what occurs. Of course, following on from this, he also comments on his show on the day after the interview, I wouldn't believe her if she read me a weather report. And this, combined with the newspaper column, of course, came to the attention of Meghan Markle. And at that juncture, it was reported that Miss Markle was understood to have written to CEO Carolyn McCall at ITV, raising concerns over how Morgan's words would affect the mental health dialogue in the United Kingdom and may even impact someone contemplating suicide. Now, what has happened here is this. As I have explained, Meghan kept coming up on the radar for Piers Morgan, and therefore his narcissism compelled him to continue to provoke and smear through his newspaper column, through Twitter and interviews, each time needing to assert control over her. As I've explained earlier, some of those things will not have come to Meghan Markle's attention. Many of them will have done, and she'll have responded by asserting control indirectly by commenting adversely about Piers Morgan to her supporters and sympathisers, or just ignoring it. Second and third assertions of control. She goes further on this occasion. She capitalises upon her perception of the head of steam that she's developed through the interview no doubt buoyed by the tremendous amounts of positive fuel received from her supporters and also negative fuel from her detractors, so that she seeks to assert control over Piers Morgan for his complaints about her in the press and on his television programme by writing to the CEO. This is an indirect assertion of control to complain about Morgan's conduct in order to have something done about it. It's a little bit like if a dog is trying to bite you, you ring the city pound and ask them to come and take the dog away. You don't tackle the dog directly for fear of being bitten, and instead you get somebody else to nullify the threat. This is what Meghan Markle did. And hitherto, she will have responded in an indirect fashion towards Piers Morgan by talking about him to other people and not doing something so public. On this occasion, her narcissism directed her to take a more proactive step of not just bad-mouthing him to her supporters, to Prince Harry, etc., but instead causing her to issue a complaint against Morgan so that he would be investigated. And, of course, that action by her threatens his control. And Morgan, again, taking to Twitter with his 7.8 million followers, states, "On Monday, I said I didn't believe Meghan Markle in her Oprah interview. I've had time to reflect on this opinion, and I still don't." Piers, showing his usual haughty arrogance for which he is both reviled and admired, because often the narcissist, being so outspoken in such a fashion, is very much liked by individuals, because the narcissist will say things which are viewed as accurate and accord with people, and because of the platform, the need to be outspoken and the need to assert control, prominent and famous narcissists will often say the very things that people want to be heard, want to be said, rather. And there we have it. This has been the dynamic between these two narcissists. One, repeatedly going on the offensive as a consequence of his public platforms through the need to indirectly assert control. Be under no illusion that Meghan Markle will have expressed repeated unpleasant observations about Piers Morgan, but will have not done so from a prominent public platform. That doesn't matter. She is still able to assert control indirectly by talking to friends and supporters, etc. But the complaint that she then put in was calculated, not in the sense of her thinking, if I do this, this is what will be the outcome, but it is the response which will result in the difference is she did not have public platforms on which she could assert control indirectly, and instead will have done so privately. The outcome is the same. It will enable her in the unconscious to feel that control has been obtained. However, on this occasion, no doubt probably given the ferocity of the comments and the platforms on which they were being made, and also because her narcissism saw a useful opportunity to not only nullify the threat posed by Piers Morgan utilising the facade by talking about the fact that there were concerns that this would affect the mental health dialogue in the UK, facade management, and may even impact someone's contemplating suicide, false compassion. The complaint was raised purely for the purposes of asserting control over Piers Morgan, whilst catering to facade management. It wasn't done out of any genuine concern about people contemplating suicide. Why? Because it came from a narcissist, and narcissists have no emotional empathy. Thus, this has been a very interesting situation of when narcissists collide, showing the repeated need on both sides, but more often publicly with Piers Morgan, to assert control, evidencing various manipulations such as flattery, compliment, bribery, in terms of buying dirty martinis, hypocrisy, the manipulations of pity play, the manipulation of smearing, provocation, triangulation, blame shifting, all played out across this royal saga. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.